The Montana wilderness stretched endlessly under the star-filled night sky. Tom Miller, a veteran park ranger of 15 years, sat on his cabin's porch, sipping hot coffee and watching for any unusual activity in his sector. At 45 years old, he had seen everything from grizzly bears to lost hikers, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened that night. The first sign came as a bright streak across the sky. Tom initially mistook it for a meteor, but the object's erratic movement caught his attention. It weaved through the air, leaving a trail of smoke and sparks, before disappearing behind the tree line with a thunderous crash that echoed through the valley. Tom grabbed his emergency kit, flashlight, and radio before jumping into his patrol vehicle. The impact site wasn't far, maybe 2 miles into the dense forest. As he drove along the rough trail, his headlights caught glimpses of broken trees and disturbed earth, creating an obvious path toward whatever had crashed. The scene that greeted him was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. A metallic object, roughly the size of a small bus, had carved a deep trench through the forest floor. The vessel's surface gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, and strange symbols decorated its hull. Steam hissed from several ruptures in its side, and a faint blue light pulsed from within. "Base, this is Miller," Tom spoke into his radio. "I've got something unusual here. You're not going to believe this, but I think it's a spacecraft." Before Base could respond, a sound caught his attention, a low, pained growl unlike any animal he'd ever heard. Tom's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a sight that made his blood run cold. Emerging from the wreckage was a creature that seemed to combine the worst fears of human evolution. It stood nearly 8 feet tall on powerful hind legs, its body covered in scales that seemed to absorb light. A long whip-like tail helped it balance as it stumbled forward. Its head resembled a mix between a big cat and something from Earth's prehistoric past, with rows of sharp teeth visible even with its mouth closed. The creature was injured. Dark fluid, presumably its blood, dripped from several wounds, and one of its arms hung limply at its side. Despite its fearsome appearance, Tom saw something in its eyes that struck him deeply: intelligence, pain, and fear. Years of experience dealing with injured wildlife kicked in. Instead of running, Tom slowly set down his flashlight, creating a pool of light between them. He removed his jacket, holding it out in front of him like a peace offering. The creature watched him with intense, golden eyes that reflected the flashlight's beam. "Easy there, big fellow," Tom said softly, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature made a clicking sound, followed by a series of chirps that seemed almost like speech. It took a step forward, swayed, and nearly collapsed. Without thinking, Tom rushed forward to help, managing to brace himself against the creature's less injured side. The alien's scales were smooth and warm to the touch, and he could feel powerful muscles beneath them. Up close, he noticed more details: complex patterns on its scales, what appeared to be clothing or armor around its torso, and most surprisingly, a device attached to its wrist that glowed with the same blue light as the ship. Instead of attacking, the creature allowed Tom to help it sit down. Its breathing was labored, but it made no aggressive moves. In fact, it seemed to be studying Tom with as much curiosity as he was studying it. Tom's radio crackled to life. "Miller, please respond. What do you mean by spacecraft? Do you need backup?" The creature's head snapped toward the sound, a low growl rumbling in its throat. Tom slowly reached for his radio, maintaining eye contact with the alien. "Negative on the backup," he responded carefully. "Situation is under control, but we're going to need medical assistance, and maybe someone from the government. This is definitely first contact." As he set the radio down, Tom realized he had just become part of something much bigger than himself. Here he was, a simple park ranger, face to face with an alien that looked like it could tear him apart in seconds, yet something told him this was the beginning of an incredible friendship. The creature made another series of clicks and chirps, then pointed to itself with its good arm. Tom smiled, understanding the universal gesture of introduction. This was just the beginning of a story that would change not just his life, but the course of human history. The next 48 hours proved to be the most intense of Tom's life. After his initial contact, a small military contingent arrived at the crash site, along with medical personnel and government scientists. They wanted to contain the situation, but Tom refused to leave the alien side, insisting that trust had already been established. The creature, which Tom had started calling Swift due to its incredibly quick movements even when injured, was transported to a hastily constructed facility near the crash site. The government had wanted to move them to a more secure location, but Swift's injuries and the delicate nature of first contact made that impossible. Tom noticed how Swift's behavior changed dramatically when others were around. With military personnel, the alien became tense, its scales slightly raising like a cat's fur. But when alone with Tom, Swift showed remarkable intelligence and curiosity. One morning, while Tom sat in Swift's medical containment area, he noticed the alien studying him intently. Swift pointed to various objects in the room, making different clicking sounds for each one. Tom realized Swift was creating a rudimentary dictionary. "Light," Tom said clearly, pointing to the ceiling lamp. Swift repeated the word with an accent that made it sound more like light, but the meaning was clear. They spent hours this way, building a basic vocabulary. During one of these sessions, a young scientist dropped a metal tray, causing a loud crash. Before anyone could blink, Swift had moved across the room with incredible speed, positioning itself between Tom and the perceived threat. But instead of attacking, Swift simply stood guard, showing protective instincts rather than aggression. "It's okay," Tom said softly, placing a hand on Swift's arm. "Just an accident." The alien relaxed immediately at his touch, something that amazed the observing scientists. Through their growing communication, Tom learned that Swift's species was feared across the galaxy. The Shadow Claws, as they called themselves, were apex predators who had evolved into a spacefaring civilization. Their appearance and natural abilities had caused other species to fear and avoid them, leading to isolation and misunderstanding. One evening, while sharing a meal, Swift had a preference for raw meat. Tom noticed the alien attempting to mimic his table manners. Despite having claws that could tear through metal, Swift was trying to handle a fork with surprising gentleness. The sight made Tom laugh, which led to Swift making the strange chirping sound that Tom realized was their version of laughter. Not everyone was happy about the growing friendship. General Parker, the military officer in charge of the facility, argued that Tom was being too casual with a potentially dangerous alien species. "Miller, this isn't some stray dog you found. That thing could kill everyone in this facility in minutes if it wanted to." "That thing has a name," Tom responded firmly. "And if Swift wanted to hurt anyone, it would have done so already. What we have here is a chance to understand each other." The turning point came during a medical examination. The doctors needed to treat a deep wound on Swift's back, but the alien wouldn't let anyone near it. Tom understood why. In the wild, showing your back to another predator meant death. "Trust me," Tom said, looking into Swift's golden eyes. He turned his back to the alien and waited. After a moment, he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. When he turned around, Swift had shifted to allow access to the wound, but kept its eyes fixed on Tom. The doctors worked quickly while Tom talked softly, telling stories about Earth and its wildlife. Swift remained perfectly still, only moving to tilt its head when Tom mentioned something particularly interesting. Later that night, Swift used the translation device they'd been working on to communicate a simple but profound message. "Others fear. You understand. Why?" Tom thought carefully before responding. "Because I've learned that fear often comes from not understanding, and I wanted to understand you." Swift made that chirping laugh again and added, "Human strange, but good strange." Word of their successful communication spread quickly through the facility. Scientists who had been skeptical began to see the possibility of meaningful diplomatic relations with the Shadow Claws. Even General Parker had to admit that Tom's approach had achieved more in a few days than any traditional protocol could have. As Tom watched Swift carefully examining a butterfly that had found its way into the facility, he realized that sometimes the most dangerous-looking creatures could have the gentlest souls. The galaxy's most feared predator had become his friend. And this was just the beginning of their story. 3 weeks after the crash landing, the temporary facility had transformed into a hub of interspecies communication. Tom and Swift spent their days sharing information about their respective worlds, surprising everyone with the depth of their growing understanding. One particular morning, Tom brought something special to their daily meeting, his old guitar. Swift's reaction to music became one of the most fascinating discoveries about Shadowclaw culture. As Tom strummed the first chords of a simple folk song, Swift's scales shifted colors slightly, turning from their usual dark shade to a softer, almost iridescent blue. "Your people make sound patterns too?" Swift asked through the now refined translation device. The alien's grasp of English had improved remarkably, though certain concepts still required careful explanation. "We call it music," Tom replied, continuing to play. "Does your species have something similar?" Swift's response came as a surprise to everyone in the room. The alien began producing a complex series of harmonized tones from somewhere deep in its chest, creating what could only be described as a song. The sound was haunting and beautiful, making the humans present stop and listen in amazement. "This is our story song," Swift explained after finishing. "Each Shadowclaw creates their own at maturity. It tells of our life, our family, our achievements. We sing together in great gatherings." The revelation that the galaxy's most feared predators were essentially hosting concert gatherings shattered many preconceptions. When Tom shared videos of Earth's wildlife and explained how humans often feared predators like lions and tigers, while also admiring their beauty, Swift understood immediately. "Fear and respect. We know these well," Swift said. "Other species see our teeth, our claws, our speed. They do not stay to see our art, our songs, our stories. We accepted this long ago." During their cultural exchanges, Swift shared holographic images of the Shadowclaw homeworld. It was a planet of towering crystal formations and deep forests, where their species had evolved from pack hunters into a civilization that valued both strength and creativity. "Our buildings," Swift explained, projecting an image of a city that seemed to grow from the crystal formations themselves, are designed to capture and reflect light in patterns that tell our history. Each color, each shadow has meaning." Tom was fascinated by how the Shadowclaws had integrated their predatory nature with advanced technology and rich cultural traditions. They hadn't suppressed their natural instincts but had channeled them into art, architecture, and community. One day, while sharing Earth's literature, Tom read Swift some poetry. The alien was particularly moved by haiku, appreciating how much meaning could be packed into such a small form. In response, Swift demonstrated a Shadowclaw tradition of movement stories, where they used their natural agility to perform elaborate physical narratives. The scientists observing their interactions were amazed by the complexity of Shadowclaw society. Dr. Adams, the lead cynoanthropologist, noted that their misconceptions about the species had prevented anyone from discovering this rich culture before. "Why did your people never try to correct these misconceptions?" Tom asked one evening, as they watched the sunset from a specially constructed observation deck. Swift's response was thoughtful. "Pride, perhaps. Also protection. Those who fear us leave us in peace. But watching your world through transmissions, seeing how humans face their fears, how they change and adapt, this made me curious. Made many of us curious." It turned out that the Shadowclaws had been observing Earth for some time, fascinated by humanity's ability to cooperate with former predators, turning wolves into dogs, finding ways to coexist with dangerous species in protected areas. The cultural exchange went both ways. Swift became fascinated by human cooking, though unable to eat most Earth foods. The concept of preparing food rather than consuming it raw was foreign to Shadowclaws, but they appreciated the artistry involved. Tom also learned that Shadowclaw society was built on complex pack bonds, not unlike human families. Swift's own pack was now on their way to Earth, drawn by the unprecedented success of this first contact. As they continued sharing their worlds with each other, both Tom and Swift realized they were part of something revolutionary. They weren't just breaking down barriers between their species, they were creating a template for how different cultures could learn from each other, regardless of their evolutionary background or appearances. "Humans are teaching us something important," Swift said one day. "That being feared and being understood are choices. We have chosen fear for too long." The news of a human Shadowclaw friendship spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within a month of Swift's crash landing, Earth's orbit had become crowded with alien observation vessels, keeping their distance, but watching intently as history unfolded below. Tom found himself at the center of an interstellar diplomatic storm. News feeds from across the galaxy, transmitted through Swift's repaired communication systems, showed various alien species reacting to the unprecedented situation. Some called humans reckless, others thought them secretly dangerous, while a few showed cautious optimism. "Your people have caused quite a stir," Tom commented, watching a holographic broadcast where a floating jellyfish-like alien was gesturing frantically about human unpredictability. Swift made a sound that Tom now recognized as amusement. "They fear what they don't understand. Humans don't react with fear like others. This scares them more than our claws." The arrival of Swift's pack changed everything. Their ship descended through Earth's atmosphere with a grace that belied its massive size. 3 adult Shadowclaws emerged, each bearing distinct scale patterns that Swift explained were family markings. The pack's leader, who Tom came to know as Storm, was even larger than Swift. Instead of the expected diplomatic tensions, the meeting between humans and the Shadowclaw pack became something entirely different. Storm, after observing Tom and Swift's interaction, did something unprecedented. They performed a pack greeting ritual for the human delegation. "This has never happened before," Swift explained excitedly. "No non-Shadowclaw has ever been honored with the greeting dance." The ritual was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The Shadowclaws moved with liquid grace, their scales shifting colors in complex patterns, while they performed acrobatic maneuvers that demonstrated both their deadly capabilities and their artistic control. The alien observers in orbit went into a frenzy. The Galactic Council, a loose federation of spacefaring species, called an emergency session. Their main concern: what would happen if humans and Shadowclaws formed an alliance? "They think we will become too powerful together," Storm explained during a meeting with Earth's leaders. "They fear our strength combined with your adaptability." The United Nations had to quickly establish a new department for interstellar relations. Tom found himself promoted from park ranger to cultural attaché, a position he accepted with his usual calm practicality. One afternoon, while helping Swift demonstrate Shadowclaw hunting techniques to a group of amazed wildlife biologists, they received news that would change everything. The Galactic Council had sent an official delegation to Earth, the first time they had ever approached a pre-spacefaring civilization directly. The Council's representatives arrived in ships that emphasized their technological superiority. Their delegation included species that looked like living crystals, others that seemed to be made of pure energy, and some that defied human description entirely. The Council's spokesperson, a tall being with silvery skin, addressed the human Shadowclaw gathering with barely concealed concern. "We have come to understand your unusual situation. This partnership is unprecedented." Tom stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Swift. "Sometimes unprecedented things are exactly what we need. The Shadowclaws aren't what everyone thought they were. Maybe it's time for the galaxy to learn that lesson." The council members shifted uncomfortably as Swift's pack demonstrated their cultural achievements, their music, their art, their stories. Many of the alien delegates were seeing these aspects of Shadowclaw civilization for the first time. Other species began reaching out, cautiously at first. A group of aquatic aliens requested permission to study human ocean exploration techniques. A species of underground dwellers expressed interest in Earth's mining technology. The Shadowclaws, for the first time in their history, found themselves being approached for cultural exchange, rather than being avoided in fear. "Your friendship has changed everything," Swift told Tom as they watched another diplomatic ship enter Earth's atmosphere. "Other species are beginning to see us differently, and we are learning to see ourselves differently too." The galaxy was changing, all because a park ranger had chosen understanding over fear. As Tom looked at the stars that night, now knowing what lay among them, he realized that humanity's first steps into the galactic community had come not through superior technology or military might, but through the simple act of reaching out in friendship to those others feared. "We're just getting started," Tom said, and Swift's answering roar of agreement echoed across the Montana wilderness, a sound that no longer brought fear, but hope for the future. The first warning came from a Shadowclaw patrol ship near the edge of the solar system. A massive fleet had just emerged from hyperspace. The Ravagers, a species known for attacking developing civilizations they deemed unworthy of galactic membership. Tom stood in the newly constructed Earth Defense Command Center, watching as holographic displays showed the approaching threat. Swift's scales had darkened to a deep obsidian, a sign of serious concern that Tom had learned to recognize. "They believe Earth is contaminating galactic order," Swift explained, studying the tactical displays. "By befriending us, they think humans have shown themselves to be dangerously unpredictable." The Ravager fleet's message was broadcast across all frequencies. "The human species has shown poor judgment in allying with natural predators. They cannot be trusted to join galactic civilization. We will correct this mistake." Earth's military leaders gathered around holographic war tables, their faces grim. Humanity's weapons were primitive compared to the approaching fleet. Even with the defense technology shared by friendly aliens, Earth stood little chance against such an overwhelming force. Swift's pack leader, Storm, stepped forward during the emergency meeting. "We will not abandon our friends. The Shadowclaw Empire stands with Earth." The declaration sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Never in recorded history had the Shadowclaws formally allied with another species. Within hours, Shadowclaw warships began arriving in the solar system. Their vessels were unlike anything humans had seen before. Sleek, dark ships that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with the same deadly grace as their creators. "Our ships are feared across the galaxy," Swift told Tom as they watched the Shadowclaw fleet take up defensive positions around Earth. "But no one has ever seen them fight. We avoided war, accepting our isolation. Now we have something worth fighting for." The Ravagers hadn't expected this response. Their fleet halted at the edge of the solar system, reassessing the situation. Their next message carried a note of uncertainty. "The Shadowclaws cannot be trusted. They will turn on you, humans. Join us in eliminating this threat to galactic peace." Tom's response, broadcast across all channels, was simple but powerful. "You claim to protect galactic peace, but you're the only ones threatening war. The Shadowclaws have shown us nothing but friendship and culture. Maybe you're the ones who need to learn about trust." The Ravager fleet began to advance. Earth's cities went dark as they prepared for possible attack. Military bases around the world activated their new defense systems, developed through cooperation between human and Shadowclaw engineers. In orbit, Shadowclaw ships moved into complex formations that resembled their ritual dances. Swift explained that their combat strategies were based on the same principles as their cultural expressions, a deadly blend of art and power. "We have called for more help," Storm announced during a strategy meeting. "Other Shadowclaw packs are coming. For the first time in our history, we fight not for territory or resources, but for friendship." The tension built as more Shadowclaw ships arrived hourly. The Ravager fleet now faced something unprecedented, the full military might of a species they had only known through fearful rumors. Tom worked tirelessly with both human and Shadow Claw commanders, helping them coordinate their efforts. His understanding of both species proved invaluable in creating a unified defense strategy. "The Ravagers expect us to fight like animals," Swift observed, watching the enemy fleet's movements. "They don't understand that we, like humans, have evolved beyond our primitive instincts. We choose when to use our strength." As the enemy drew closer, Earth's population watched the skies with a mixture of fear and hope. The sight of Shadow Claw ships defending their planet, once unthinkable, now brought comfort. The final count showed over 300 Shadow Claw warships in orbit, the largest gathering of their forces ever recorded. The Ravager fleet, though still larger, had lost the initiative of surprise and absolute superiority. "Whatever happens," Tom said to Swift as they prepared for the coming battle, "you've proved that appearances can be deceiving. Your people aren't monsters. You're the friends humanity needed but never expected to find." Swift's response rumbled with determination. "And you have proved that sometimes the bravest act is offering friendship when others expect fear. Now we show the galaxy what this friendship can achieve." The battle for Earth was about to begin, and with it, the future of human-Shadow Claw relations would be decided once and for all. The Ravager fleet struck at dawn, their ships darkening Earth's skies like an approaching storm. Their first volley of energy weapons illuminated space with brilliant flashes of destructive power, but the combined human-Shadow Claw defense was ready. Shadow Claw ships moved with incredible speed, their darker-than-black hulls seeming to bend space itself as they danced through the enemy fire. Human ground defenses, enhanced with Shadow Claw technology, provided supporting fire from the surface, creating a complex web of crossfire. From the command center, Tom and Swift coordinated the defense efforts. "Their ships are powerful but predictable," Swift observed, watching the tactical displays. "They fight like machines, following standard patterns." The Shadow Claw combat style was anything but standard. Their ships moved in formations that mimicked their ritual dances, making them nearly impossible to track. When they struck, they did so with devastating precision, their weapons cutting through Ravager shields like they weren't even there. Pattern Omega, Storm commanded, and the Shadow Claw fleet split into smaller groups, each moving in synchronized patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. Human missile batteries provided cover fire, forcing Ravager ships to divide their attention. The first major victory came when a group of Shadow Claw raiders, led by Swift's packmate, slipped through the Ravager formation and disabled their command ship's main weapons. The massive vessel hung in space, its weapon ports dark and silent. "Your people fight like artists," Tom commented, watching the Shadow Claw ships weave through space with deadly grace. "Each movement has purpose, like steps in a dance." "And your people fight with creativity we never expected," Swift replied, noting how human commanders were adapting their strategies on the fly, using Earth's gravity and their limited technology in innovative ways. The battle turned decisively when the Ravagers attempted to launch their ground invasion. Dropships entered Earth's atmosphere, but they faced a surprise. Shadow Claw warriors had been deployed to key locations around the globe, fighting alongside human special forces. In the skies above New York, Paris, and Tokyo, Ravager ships found themselves caught between ground-based defenses and Shadow Claw interceptors. The sight of Shadow Claws fighting to protect human cities was broadcast worldwide, forever changing how humanity viewed their new allies. One Ravager commander, watching his forces fall to the combined defense, sent a message: "This is impossible. Predators and prey cannot fight as one." Storm's response was immediate: "We are not predator and prey. We are allies who understand that strength comes in many forms." The tide turned completely when the Shadow Claw ships executed their master strategy. Hundreds of ships moved in perfect synchronization, creating a web of gravitational distortions that trapped the remaining Ravager fleet. Their ships, caught in the artificial gravity well, could neither advance nor retreat. "Now," Tom said, "we show them the power of cooperation." Human and Shadow Claw weapons fired simultaneously. The Ravager ships, their defenses already strained by the gravitational attack, couldn't withstand the combined assault. One by one, their engines went dark. The battle had lasted less than 6 hours. The Ravager fleet, once considered among the most powerful in the galaxy, had been thoroughly defeated by the unexpected alliance. Their remaining ships retreated, leaving their damaged vessels behind. In the aftermath, as cleanup operations began, Tom stood with Swift watching Earth's sunset. The sky was still filled with Shadowclaw ships, but now they brought comfort rather than fear to those watching below. "Your people fought for us," Tom said quietly. "The galaxy will never see the Shadowclaws the same way again." Swift's scales shifted to a proud bronze color. "And they will never see humans as weak again. Your species proved that true strength lies in seeing past fear to find friendship." The battle became known across the galaxy as the Day of the Dance, named for the way Shadowclaw ships had moved through space with lethal grace. It marked the beginning of a new era in galactic politics, where the combined might of humans and Shadowclaws would help maintain peace rather than inspire fear. As news of the victory spread, other species began reaching out, seeking to understand how this unlikely alliance had achieved such a decisive victory. The answer was simple. They had trusted in friendship over fear, in understanding over prejudice, and in the power of working together. The galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, the planet had transformed into a hub of interstellar cooperation. The former Montana facility where Tom had first helped Swift had grown into the Galactic Cultural Exchange Center, its halls filled with representatives from dozens of species who once feared both humans and Shadowclaws. Tom stood on the center's observation deck, watching as ships from across the galaxy moved through Earth's orbit. Beside him, Swift had grown into an official diplomat, though the Shadowclaw still preferred hunting in the wilderness with Tom during their free time. "Remember when everyone thought you would eat me?" Tom joked, watching a group of young Shadowclaws teaching human children their traditional dances in the courtyard below. Swift's scales rippled with amusement. "Now they fear humans might be the dangerous ones. Your species adapts too quickly for them to predict." The Galactic Council had officially recognized Earth as a full member, the fastest advancement of any species in galactic history. The Human Shadowclaw Alliance had become a model for interspecies cooperation, proving that different evolutionary paths didn't have to lead to conflict. In cities across Earth, Shadowclaw architecture began to appear, beautiful crystalline structures that caught and reflected light in stunning patterns. Humans, in turn, had helped the Shadowclaws discover the joy of sports and competitive games that didn't involve actual combat. "The galaxy is changing," Storm observed during a diplomatic meeting. "Other predator species are emerging from isolation, inspired by our example. Prey species are learning to look past their instinctive fears." The most significant change came in education. Schools across Earth now included young Shadowclaws among their students, while human children were welcomed into Shadowclaw learning centers. The sight of the galaxy's most feared predators helping human toddlers with art projects became wonderfully common. Tom's role had evolved as well. As the first human to befriend a Shadowclaw, he was often called upon to help forge new connections between species. His simple approach, treating everyone with respect, regardless of appearance, had become a cornerstone of new diplomatic protocols. "Your friendship changed us," Swift told Tom during a quiet moment. "For generations, we accepted being feared. Now we remember who we truly are, not just predators, but artists, scholars, and friends." The Ravagers, humbled by their defeat, had undergone their own transformation. Under the guidance of human and Shadowclaw diplomats, they began to question their old beliefs about strength and weakness. Their ships now occasionally visited Earth, not for war, but for cultural exchange. In the Montana wilderness, where it all began, a memorial had been built at the site of Swift's crash landing. The plaque read in multiple languages, "Here, fear gave way to friendship, and the galaxy learned to see with new eyes." The biggest surprise came from the younger generations. Human and Shadowclaw children, played together without a trace of fear or prejudice, creating new games that combined human creativity with Shadowclaw athletic abilities. They grew up seeing each other not as different species, but as simply friends. "Did you ever imagine this?" Tom asked Swift as they watched a sunset from their old spot near the crash site. "When you were falling from the sky that night?" Swift's scales shifted to a warm gold color that indicated contentment. "I hoped to survive the crash. Instead, I helped change the galaxy." The changes continued to spread. Other species began forming their own unlikely alliances, inspired by the human Shadowclaw example. The galaxy was becoming more connected, more understanding, and paradoxically, more peaceful because of the friendship between its most feared predators and the unexpectedly brave humans. As night fell over Montana, Tom could see the lights of ships in orbit, their patterns telling stories of a new age of cooperation. Somewhere up there, human scientists worked alongside Shadowclaw engineers, combining their knowledge to explore the universe together. "We still have much to learn from each other," Swift said, looking at the stars. Tom nodded, thinking of how far they'd come from that first frightening encounter. "That's what friends do," he replied. "They keep learning, keep growing, keep surprising each other." In the distance, a group of human and Shadowclaw voices joined in one of the traditional pack songs, their different voices creating something entirely new and beautiful. It was the perfect symbol of their shared future, not predator and prey, not advanced and primitive, but partners in the great dance of life among the stars.